All right, we are back for another podcast, season 2, episode 12, where we talk service analytics. It's a really exciting topic as our country continues to see the changes in the world, right? So today we have Scott Adams with Service Operations Institute, SOI,
Good
and
morning.
his great hair. Scott, you look so good on camera. We can't thank you enough for being with us.
You're so
Um,
kind, Nick. You're so kind.
I mean. And we got Lee Koski, who is the opposite, a little less hair, but yet he brings his smiling face.
There you
Lee's our
go.
vice president of service here at MSD. He's not only a great teammate, but he's a very dear friend. So it's awesome for me to be able to be on this podcast and be able to talk to two guys that I have the utmost respect for when it comes to making sure we take care of people, clients, and impact facilities in a meaningful manner.
Mhm.
Passion's real. I think a lot of people, go after and try to go to work every day and it's just a job. This is a life, right? This is when we talk about relationships, we talk about, being there for our clients and making sure that, we support them. And that's, based on the foundation of trust, right? Being where we say we are going to
Right.
be, doing what we say we're going to do, right? So when we talk service analytics, our topic for today, there's a lot that is out there. There's a lot happening in the world. Um, and one of the things to start off is what's happening with the power grid? What are you guys seeing out there?
Go ahead, Lee. Why don't you shoot first?
Well, high level, our power grid's out of date and it's getting overwhelmed, right? There's more draw on it as things go more electric. And on top of that, we're seeing, equipment is becoming more sophisticated and more sensitive to the transients and spikes, whatever, a building is experiencing. So it needs some help. The grid needs some help, and our facilities need some help to, protect their assets on site. So high level, that's kind of what we're talking about here today. How do we do that? How do we get that information to the clients, and more importantly, what do they need to know, right? So
Yeah, I think
there's
they've
a
been
lot
talking
of
about.
avenues.
Yeah, they've been talking about an aging distribution network for about a decade, right? Like the transmission lines and the the duration factor associated with that, and now you have a spin up of these multifaceted data centers that are really consuming. I mean, I see signs, believe it or not, as I'm driving, like no data centers because it's affecting the power grid,
Yeah.
and people are just afraid of that energy consumption and that actually the cost of the energy going up, which leads us to like wherever there's a problem, there's a solution. Portable nuclear, right? I mean, that's coming into play, especially when it comes to some of these large energy consuming operations. So, solar, putting back, but again, you're putting back to the same transmission line that's been creating a problem for us for the last decade or so.
Lee here at MSD, we've seen transients, right? So you want to talk a little bit about like the power grid and how it's flowing through our streets, right? Underground, above ground. The things we can't see is until they get to the building. And then we're seeing spikes. And, those create a lot of different challenges, especially in a service world where you have highly sophisticated boards and components that, can impact these. You want to talk a little bit about the transients that we've seen and
Yeah.
kind of what's out there?
Well, in the past, a regular motor could take plus or minus 10%, say. That was kind of the old rule of thumb. We have a particular client with a lot of ECM motors, drives on sites, and really had an issue with those things failing. Started to dig into it and got a hold of the manufacturer, dug a little bit more, and they can take plus or minus 3%. So the old school thinking of 10%, well, the power's not that big of an issue. Those days are going away. So the stuff's becoming more sensitive. It can't take the fluctuations in the power like it used to. So seeing a lot of that on control boards, VFDs, ECMs, and again, as equipment gets more and more efficient, more complicated, more smart, those components are needed to achieve that. And they're more sensitive. So we have to have something before that equipment on the facility's power to protect those. So we're seeing that a lot in newer equipment. And it's really tough to find unless you're standing right in front of the equipment when it happens, right? Unless you have loggers on it or some type of equipment that can show you what was going on. So I think that is super important as we're installing new equipment. We need to be installing stuff to watch the power that's being fed to these assets.
Yeah, and it's one thing to see what's coming in, but it's also in layers, right? So a good place to start. One thing we've been trying to do with like clients is just where's your utility bills at? What are you spending? What are you seeing? Right. And we can then start to really assess, right? Because Scott, like you're big on the data and the analytical insight. So that just gives us a good foundation of where are you at? What's your electric bill? There's demand charges, and once you hit your peak demand, that's your rate that you pay for the next 11 months. And that's a real cost, right? So
That's a real cost.
And then if you have a transient that gets through and you have an insurance claim now on top of that because you lost, a portion of your building, that's another cost, right? So then that just stacks on these rising utility costs, the rising electric bills, and then now you got equipment down, TNN, break fixes, and it's reactionary and it's very costly to clients, right? So one thing we're really focusing on and we wanted to highlight today in this call is how do we use our analytics, what's out there to, number one, protect us from these transients, right? What's some of the platforms that we've seen out there in the market that can at least provide some protection? And then how do we layer it? And how do we showcase and collect all that data to give it back to the client to help them make informed decisions? So what are you guys seeing out there? What's kind of out there in the market? To where we can protect facilities from the transients and provide clients with the information of where's the power going, how is it being used.
Lee, why don't you catch this one first?
Well, what we're doing here at MSD is we've partnered up with SR Smart Energy Solutions, and great product, and we are monitoring. We can monitor whatever you want, every panel, incoming, outgoing, before, after the equipment. And it's really showcasing how you're using your energy. So Nick, to your point, what's your peak demand? Maybe a facility is starting everything all at once and we have spikes rising up. This helps us see what they're using, when they're using, and how much they're using. So we can start to smooth that out, right? Bring the peaks down. What equipment might be out of date and just frankly isn't efficient anymore, running high amperage. So it really helps us see what the building is doing, how it's reacting when other pieces are starting, to where we can start to smooth out that line for them, bring those bills down, identify equipment that might be a little bit out of date and isn't utilizing technology for efficiency. So that's been a great tool. About to put that into our headquarters here in Dayton, Ohio. Really looking forward to that. We just finished up our training on it, the install, the setup. It's a pretty nice piece of equipment.
And that's Best Energy, right? Best
Yes.
Energy.
Best Energy. Yep.
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on, I mean, you guys remember the days of old, like, I don't know, even 25 years ago, they started up performance contracting, right? Where, large organizations, ESCOs would come in and they would, do the same thing. They would profile your energy usage and the equipment that's consuming it, and then come up with a viable solution or replacement strategy for that equipment and saved by the energy savings. So the payback was running 15, 20 years, but it was like a net zero cost to the client. I don't see that so much anymore, but there's just tremendous opportunity to do that because, as you well know, once you install systems and even your controls play so significantly into your energy saving strategies, every day that goes by, you're losing optimization. So, that was the whole concept of retro commissioning is, coming in and reassessing every aspect of the operational characteristics of your equipment and your energy profile, and then what can be done to optimize that. So I don't think, energy prices are not going to go down. They're only going to continue to escalate. I think it's very prudent to use technology now, especially for those large consumptive clients, to get a hold of that.
And you bring up a great point, Scott. How important are companies' controls departments in this whole game?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of facilities have building automation. Are they using it correctly? How often are they looking at it? How often are they setting it up?
Yeah.
As you know, you probably go into a building, you look at it, and people been in there clicking and overriding and this and that. Is the building actually running as good as it should be or could be? Just solely based on the BAS system. Here we're trying to focus on doing maintenance visits on just the controls themselves, getting some eyes, make sure that the building is doing what we want it to do. And I think that can be missed sometimes.
Yeah.
And you seeing the same type of importance
Yeah,
there?
I mean, it's completely ignored, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the BAS systems are, they're basically not being utilized to their fullest extent unless you have a critical operations. To do even, everyone, kind of gets a little frightened with retro commissioning. Wow, it's a big process, right? Especially if you go through utility, it's a rather cumbersome, very, heavy kind of engagement. But you can do things like sequence commissioning on systems where you take, an air handler, large air handler, and you run it through its paces and you validate all the sensors. And, you can get confidence then on a piece by piece kind of structure and strategy that, it's working. And then when you, get to the end, you have a well-running system. So that's really what you want to do. I mean, if you look at a chiller plant operation, you're talking 30% consumed energy for that facility. So to not optimize that and really, pay special attention to that part of your operation is a good thing.
That's real money, and just to recap, so there's so much going on here, right? So as your power comes into your facility, we want to highlight to people, it's really important to work with your clients out there. Make sure you have surge protection, right? Because these transients are getting through and it's getting out there in the facility. There's a lot of different energy platforms where we can measure to see where the power is going. MSD is using Best Energy, which has been a great product. We're getting heavily engaged with that. We're doing it here at our own headquarter building that we built last year. And now it's providing us analytical trends down to the second to see where the power is going on the VRF system, on the lights, on all the panels, on our IT server. So we can know what's running, what's not, what's the amperage, what's the usage, how's it flowing throughout the facility. And then you guys just opened up a whole nother can. So as you get all these analytics with whatever energy platform that you want to see where the power is going, it creates this opportunity to say, how can we improve the operations of the facility? And controls, if I'm hearing you guys right, it's like the silent night out there, right?
Yes.
I mean, you got to awaken it, right? And let it do what it does, right? And what's your guys' recommendations if a client has a proprietary system? What's the workarounds there? How do we maximize? Because I know I've seen clients where they've been locked out of their control system. So how can we protect them to still be able to allow them to be able to control the facility and the optimization?
Yeah, I think, primarily if that's the case, and and many when they do have high proprietary systems, can't get the necessary support they need to even do an engagement like this where they want to start digging in. So the recommendation there, unfortunately, is try to migrate away from it. Using some of the technologies, some of the open systems, starting at a high level and then moving down to the controller level. So that'll give you that, that visibility, that flexibility that you need, and open up a wide array of support from whoever you need to, right? Whether it be Jace or Honeywell, right? So I think that's, it's probably a long-term strategy. Short-term would be, engaging those experts within that proprietary system, but having a very defined scope, because otherwise it could be rather costly. And, getting people to commit to those type of fundamental resources is tough nowadays. Everyone's kind of strapped, especially on the control side of the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. We run into that a lot, with clients with proprietary control systems. And you try and form a partnership with whomever that is. But yeah, like you said, Scott, they're usually short staffed. You're waiting a week, 2 weeks for them to even log on remotely up on site. So I agree. I think the best solution is to develop a plan with your client to migrate away from that, whether that's in stages, the whole thing at once, however that looks.
Right.
That evolves through, data analytics, showing them, and the partnership with your client and developing a plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because normally those systems, right, are ill attended, and there's going to be tremendous opportunity. It's kind of like when we went from pneumatics to digital control. It's like the pneumatics were great, but you had no visibility. But now you have digital control, you see everything, and you go, okay, boy, I got to do something about it, but I don't have the horsepower internally to help me out here.
Right.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, right, we want to be able to get our hands on the data, on the analytics to help clients make informed decisions, right? So,
Right.
we want to be able to work with every control contractor out there, being able to get them engaged, being able to have them be part of this process, because the problem's bigger than any one thing, right? It's the power grid, it's the everything communicating in one platform, to where a lot of facility owners have to call 3 or 4 different people just to try to do what we're talking about, right? So getting everybody talking and collaborating and utilizing data to help make informed decisions is key. And there's a lot of different platforms out there. I mean, do you guys know off the top of your head what all's out there as far as like energy platforms? I know we're like AI is really kind of transforming what you see inside a facility and what's happening.
Yeah, there's a few local here in Dayton. Building Logics is one that they come in, hook up to your system with the help of AI, can really dig down into your data, analyze it, and frankly test the equipment. So maybe in the middle of the night, per se, it's running valves open and looking for temperature changes, kind of doing a PM with no boots on the ground, right? Your system is constantly checking. So that's one platform that we've looked at that is moving in that direction, where ultimately down the road, as we talk about efficiencies and getting the most out of your equipment. Personally, I think that's a great idea. If your system can be checking stuff while you're not there, sending you a report saying, hey, this valve is only opening 50% per se, we need to get on that. Ultimately, I think down the road, that's where a lot of PM maintenance is going to go.
Yeah, and enlist the help of your utility. Some utilities are very active when it comes to energy savings programs. Not just rebate programs and incentives, but actually getting involved with identifying the profile and the signature of your energy, in your facility, and then offering up any solutions that they might subsidize and also. So, different utilities, of course, across the nation have differing programs and different amount of involvement, but they'll even come in and, hook up some initial monitoring for you. But I think for a long-term strategy, which you guys are talking about, is very viable. And what I guess I'm curious, Nick, what have you seen as part of the ROI or payback on your installed systems?
Well, so one thing like where we've started with like clients is when we look at their whole facility, we kind of use, $51, $52 a square foot. So if their utility bills are higher than that, we know that there's something that's continuously running. There's something going on inside the facility that's creating that high rise cost. And then we kind of stack that with aging infrastructure. So if we can see like a lot of service orders reactionary, right, to where it's 911, you got to get this unit back up. If we're seeing a trend with certain equipment inside that building envelope, we kind of bring those two together in one platform. And then from there, we always start with the utility bills, right? And then we look at the aging infrastructure. Where is it at? Not every old piece of equipment, right, needs to be replaced, right?
Yeah.
There's mechanisms that, may components could be replaced and you could extend the life. But if it's high amperage, like Lee was saying, it's drawing a heavy energy. It's got older controls, not talking, not communicating. That's where we start to really identify that. And then what we do is we stack. So there's a lot of different financial vehicles that, like Scott, you were just saying, like utility companies will work with you. There's different incentives out there because they're trying to reduce the amount of electric going out, right? Because they need more, right? You got all these data centers going in. There's a lot happening in the world right now. So, they're trying to really regulate that back. So if we could utilize like a state funded program, or there's some federal ones we've been looking at. I mean, 179D is coming towards the end of its life expectancy, but that's still very live for anything that starts prior to this July, I believe. You can still capitalize that as long as those retrofits happen before that, which is a financial tax incentive back to the installer or the engineer. And so that just reduces your replacement costs. So that's kind of the route we go. But also a lot of these energy vehicles, they take your building envelope into consideration as well. So we can do roof, we can do mechanical equipment, we can do windows, we can do electrical performance, we can do control systems, we can do LED lighting. So every one's been a little different. It's really just working with the partners that specialize in that landscape and trying to just stack. And we've had some good success with locally where there's been $0 down. Scott, I think you mentioned that, and it's it's a major retrofit that had to be done for this facility, and so that's always really cool too, seeing a client say, "Hey, here's no money down," but yet you're also going to be get property tax exempt, right, for the length of your loan. So there's a lot of good incentives while they're getting a brand new upgrade, improving their air quality and their energy efficiency, which ultimately reduces their utility bills, reduces their electrical usage.
Yeah, and speaking about utility bills, I know we talked about this earlier, but setting your peak, your peak, you have your consumption side of your utility bill, but what's your peak charge, which is how they measure it is everything in your facility. If it would turn on at once, you would set a peak, which would be the amount of consumption that you would be capable of, and that peak charge can almost be 40% of your entire bill.
Yeah.
So and if you set it incorrectly, like let's say you have a power outage, all your systems come on at the same time, the consumptive load, right? Your all the inductive loads you have are, all the coils are absorbing the energy. And now you just set a new peak, which you're going to live with for the next year. And that's a fixed charge on your utility bill. That's where control strategies come into play. So let's say you do have a power outage, then you can sequence up some of your equipment so that you don't reset that peak. Other strategies, running things at night, like if you have a chiller plant, that's where ice making came in back in the day. Ice storage, run your chillers at night, store your make your ice, and then use your ice for the day. So you thereby reduce any peak activity. So there's still great strategies going on. I'm curious how the electrification of systems is going to play into this, because that's a big push now with a lot of manufacturers and what they're building.
Yeah.
Speaking of manufacturers, along with the sequencing of all your equipment, a lot of it now you can set what that peak is. Hey, when you spool up, don't go over X percentage, so it never hits that high peak. So commissioning of the equipment is just as important as commissioning of your automation system for the building, because you can set those back. Maybe you started a little bit earlier and you only run at 60% or whatever, making up numbers, and that can really have a huge effect on that total peak for your building.
Let it flow rather than fast, because that demand is really costly, and that's real money. That's right out the window.
Yeah, and that's kind of ignored, right? I mean, in some respects, everyone looks on the consumption side, but setting that peak is, I mean, if you can reduce that, it's it's money in the bank for sure.
Yeah. And all the analytics that are out there, right? So so just to kind of recap this talk today, right? There's plenty of systems out there, but it's really important to get a handle on your data. It's really important as a service industry. We want to be able to reduce the reactionary 911s. We want to be proactive, right? And we do believe that data is key, right? We also know that protection of the electrical, transients getting through can be very costly. So you want to make sure you have surge protection, right? And you want to know where your power is going inside your building and layering it with different levels of protection throughout your facility. And then you want to look at where's your cost going? Where's the mechanical replacements? Where's that cost going? And if we can stack that and work on these different energy efficiency improvements and these different financial vehicles, there's a lot out there that can really help clients get through these challenging times. I know we've been living proof of it here at our building, and we've already seen it drop significantly. Now we do have solar on the roof. We do have surge protection. We do have a backup generator. But what we were seeing before the solar kicked on is we were running like 24/7. And so we had to start regulating. So you can get into like automated switches, right? I mean, even having LED lights, that's still a load. That's still a cost. So, being able to walk through this here, it really kind of spikes up our passion, right? Just how important the data is and really, really measuring it by the numbers, right? Because, it's just extremely costly to any business and trying to occupy a facility and keep their business, in above the line. I mean, those are challenges and these are real costs and data's out there, technology's out there. There's a lot of different platforms out there, but the one thing that is consistent is the power grid, the transients, the failures, so we're into some interesting times, and it's important that we communicate and embrace teamwork, right? And bring everybody together.
Yeah, no, that's key. Yeah. And and this touches, in many cases, facility organizations report to financial entities within their organization. So this kind of messaging speaks well to the financial community. They kind of get this, right? Like, hey, let's use analytics, let's use technology, let's reduce spend, let's reduce consumption. So that's a good message to the CFOs and financial officers, and that can actually get some movement on a program like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's spot on there. That is spot on. Like it's got to be somebody that understands the numbers and the true costs associated with running a building, right? All the unknown factors that are out there and trying to stack and regulate and improve efficiency is absolutely critical.
Right.
Well, guys, this has been I love these little check-ins because like you guys live it every day, right? You know what it's like to run a service organization. You know what it's like to have data and not have data, right? The video footages that are out there, those platforms are absolutely critical. And I can't thank you guys enough for your passion, for taking the time to do episode 2 here. But that's really what it is, because you can go through life and do anything, but if you don't have passion, right, and a forward focused mentality to constantly move the needle to create a better world for everyone, then what are you doing, right? So
right.
I love your guys'
sloshing
passion
through life, right?
I know, like what does that even, like what, just but no, these are real. This is a real life challenge that we have right now, and it takes that optimism, out of the box thinking, and utilizing the tools that we do now have to help make this the best environment for our clients, for our people, and impact our communities in a positive way. So you guys are rock stars. Can't thank you enough, man.
Appreciate it, Nick.
Right,
and
Nick.
It's fun too. Technology is changing so quickly, and so much cool stuff is coming out that it's fun to keep up with. So having a good time with it.
there's always a way. So, stay patient, look at the right solutions. You guys heard it from these two here. There's a lot out there. So, but keep the passion rolling, and let's make clients' facilities the most energy efficient facilities that we can.